There's more level. It's all an arc going out this way.
Okay.
Not too much difference in the distance. And the immediate past, middle past, and the far past were going off back and down.
And round. All right. Okay. So I'll just share something about that first. Richard is sorting information in a manner that is parallel to brain function. Mostly people are constructing the future, and this hemisphere is involved in construction. This hemisphere is what's involved, putting something together. Generally we construct the future because it hasn't happened. Movements generally to the left are usually has found a groove or a rail in life and senses that this is the way things are going to be in the future. If it was up slightly, it would be indicating that he's feeling like there's some growth from where he's at to where he's going to be in himself, and that this possibly is going to involve some degree of tension. Because if I'm walking uphill, there's more tension involved in walking uphill than if the gradient was going down. If the gradient was going down, then I would know that Richard has accomplished what it is that he senses in himself is his growth, and from now on, more or less, he's using what knowledge he has, and that it's kind of a downhill slope. If it's a downhill slope, mostly the person it may not be as drawn because it's something that Richard already has inside, and generally we're drawn to images that are a little bit outside ourselves. Something that we're just a little bit that we're not will usually be a little higher, indicating some degree of self-involvement to get whatever it is that's out there. Richard said that also too, that the past eventually ends up going around. So what this is indicating, actually we asked you to do the exercise in a way that you were totally associated yourself, seeing through your eyes all 6 pictures laid out in front. Those of you who had this ability have the ability in life to completely lay out your life in front of you and pick from the learnings from what it is that's laid out in front. Most of us also do have timeline that is putting things behind us as well. Anybody who is putting something behind that can't see that has a place to put stuff and not be concerned about it, because it's not in their face, it's not in the front. It's not, they're not facing that. So the person who has a strategy of putting stuff behind and not being able to see that, you see there's a strategy that's excellent, possibly, about being able to put stuff behind that you really would love to put behind you. And the person who has the ability to completely lay out everything in front of them has the ability to completely, without moving or changing position, to totally be aware of the past and the future, because information is laid out in this way. Okay, so what about brightness and size and contrast?
What I wanted to say, one other thing about that position, is that part of the instructions that we were given were to, then be able to see the whole thing. What I was unable to do that with these pictures going off here, so then I moved them around here, and then I was able to see them.
Okay, so actually there was the time in your life, a month ago, or I don't know which ones it was, but a year ago certainly, possibly is something during that period of time that you have put behind you. It may up to this point been stuff that you care to not so much be concerned about. However, I would say that as you've had the ability to bring it out in front of you, and yet you can be at one with this, then I would say that there's the ability to use the experience of use the learning from the experience. It's possible to put a memory behind and then not have access to the learning that possibly was there. So anybody who's putting something behind them is putting it behind them because that's one way of dealing with this thing. Another way of dealing with it certainly is being able to lay it out in front and totally being at one with that in yourself. Okay, what about brightness and size?
The brightness and the size were pretty much parallel to one another. The brightness and the size were the least in the past, the far past, and it got a little brighter and a little slightly larger and more colorful as it got toward the present, and then it diminished slightly toward the future.
All right, in other words, pictures that were close to you in your memory of yesterday and tomorrow, these pictures were brighter, and as they moved further into the past, they became less colourful and a bit smaller.
Right.
Okay. Main thing is, what was the size difference between the one like a year ago and the one a year in the future in comparison to the ones in the present? Was there much difference in size?
Maybe the two in the immediate past and the immediate future were 40% larger than the two in the remote future and past.
Okay, all right, excellent. We'll come back to that in a second. Who else would like to elicit for us?
I want to ask a question. When you said that his future pictures got higher, went up, and you made the statement...
Well, actually, Richard's were more or less level, relatively.
But you said
if
someone had this sort of a scheme, that things would be getting better or looking up. And I'm wondering if something, an analogy like that, would be a value judgment or a cultural understanding. Let's say you could, if the pictures were going down, you could think of that as in a positive way too. Because in our culture we tend to think of things are looking up as being positive, but also you could think of, oh, life is going to be all downhill from here, so there's down in a positive way too.
Well, in physics, if it's going to be downhill, well, then there's nothing possibly challenging you. There may not be. If there's something just a little bit higher than you, then I know that you're being challenged in life, and that you truly have set up something in such a way that you are challenging yourself somewhat. And this, I think, really does stimulate us. It moves us to grow beyond where we are. There's some other stuff here that's totally to do with physiology, actually. So it's not so much interpretation. But anyway, let's go to somebody.
Mine was real different than that, and you just want to have a difference.
Yeah.
My future was over here, and my past was over here.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's real. I don't know if I'm always like that, but today, definitely it was.
Okay. All right, I would say probably Jenny's not like this usually, and that her unconscious mind has told us that she is this way today. Mm-hmm. When you've elicited a strategy from someone that's the reverse, flipped around like this, what's happening is there's something that Jenny's realised that she's wanting to be able to construct about the past, and so as a strategy to deal with something that's come up, what she's done is she's moved the past into a place where she has the ability to construct. And that because now that there's something else here, you see, anybody who does this is taking their history and bringing it around and putting it in front of them, so that the feeling then is left with the person feeling that their path is going to be, their future is going to be like the past.
Well, the history was actually over here. It was a little bit behind, and the future was out here, real panoramic.
Okay, you shared that with me. Mm-hmm. Did you catch what I just said? What I just said.
History around and put it over.
No. That you brought history. I did this. You brought history. You've brought history and brought it around in front of you. And so what the feeling will inevitably end up being is that, oh dear, my future is going to be like my history. Of course, we did that to be able to construct the past, something about the past, something that we're coping with about the past. But the main thing is this strategy leaves a person with the feeling inside that my past is going to be much like my future is going to be much like the past, because the past is where the future is.
Well, what happened was when I was doing the future, I got very involved in the future and noticed many details. The pictures were real clear, very three-dimensional.
Okay, in comparison to, so that we can use the information in a context.
Okay, the ones in the future were real. They were like moving pictures, three-dimensional, bright. They were about here. Even the furthest one was about right over here. And the things in the past were more flat, not framed at all. The pictures had like a point where the picture had a center, and then the edges of it were like soft with no frame. And what I really experienced most dramatically was that right after that wasp sting, or whatever that was, when I was thinking and visualizing the future, I had intense feelings of euphoria, so much so that my whole face just was stopped, and I was just totally euphoric at what I was creating in the future. And I mean, I could have gone on and on. Ken, I didn't want to open my eyes. I was really in the movie of this future. I could see how I could create it so easily. Okay,
so we're kind of getting into content just a little bit. Let me just ask a couple of questions. What was there a size difference between the future and the present?
The future was a little bit bigger.
Okay. Alright, so one thing just there is that there's some pressure a little bit at the moment occurring as far as the future is concerned, because mostly when you're in a tunnel like a pipe, right, you're right inside the pipe. Where you are in the pipe is quite large, and then when you look where you're going to go into the future, you know, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and fainter and fainter and fainter, and actually, so that would be an indication that the person is much expanded in their present, tonus-wise, in the brainstem with electrical current that's flowing. If somebody was feeling pressure about life and about the day, then generally their pictures will have shrunk moderately in comparison to how they see things have been possibly, or how they think things will be in the future. So, and literally wiring in a new pattern means seeing the pictures close to me in the present quite large, and seeing the pictures further and further into the future getting a little smaller and faded. Somebody who sees the future very bright and large, this strategy possibly may set the person up for disappointment, because they are picturing the future to be a certain way, and when they arrive there and it's not that same way, then it's more likely that there will be some disappointment possibly. Somebody who has the ability to totally bring the future and make it bright and large, possibly, and shrink the present, this person has the ability to see into the future somewhat. However, if it was swapped around like this, it's more likely that mostly the future is totally based on what has happened in the past, and that the past being brought round into the future, that the future very much is going to be influenced by what is being involved about the past being constructed. Let's just go to somebody else for a moment as we're still collecting information about this.
May I say one thing before you move on? What I noticed is that John made a little graph of what I was reporting when I had my eyes closed, and actually from the graph, and I remember it now, is that the future was were gradually going higher.
Yes, I remember
You
that.
asked me, though, I reported it as seeming to be.
Okay, so I remember that. What about the size? Well, basically, Richard's size was a little bigger in the future, and so what I know.
It was bigger right on either side of the present.
Yes.
And it was getting a little smaller.
Yes.
In the future, a little smaller in the past.
In other words, you were looking forward to something above and beyond what it is where you were at, and also that you have been feeling some degree of pressure in the vestibular system, being squashed down a little bit in comparison to what you feel, where you are moving actually, and that there's something that's just out there in the immediate future that's actually about something, a more expanded sense of self than the present. It's possible just to completely switch this round, to flip this round.
So, actually, I didn't have a picture of where I was in the present. The relationship between the yesterday and tomorrow, those were like the largest pictures of the whole six. And then they got progressively smaller as they went further into the future, and progressively smaller as they went further into the past.
Okay, so then that's an indication that you are feeling expanded sense of self, and not only that, but you are living much more in the present. I would say that's kind of excellent. Unless there really was something a person had to deal with, was dealing with, and then maybe they might swap things around a little bit to kind of deal or cope with things. But anyway, I would say that's somebody who is living in the present quite a bit. Right, what about Dave, your timeline?
First or the final?
Yeah, final, yeah.
Final was, I came up with was the tomorrow and the month in the future, the year in the future. It was very linear, going straight out, at an incline.
All right, okay. Were you able to see all the pictures, or was one a little bit in front of the other?
They were, as they moved out, they were quite a space between. And the first and most highest was the future year. And midway back was 1 month.
Okay. All right. This type of a layout for being able to plan things isn't as clear as being able to lay them out a little bit more. It's like having a stack of things. I'm kind of really not maybe sure what's in this stack, but if I lay the things out, it's more likely that I can see the things that are there. Someone who is unable to see into the future, I'll share with you what's occurring in the way they're sorting information. A person who is unable to see into the future, generally it's because their most present tense picture is like right here. And so now it's, they've got to look beyond what the day is actually to kind of see into the future. And so the person who has laid information out like this, this person has the ability to not be muddled by what it is that's happening in the present tense, in the present moment. Their layout is a little clearer. And generally you'll notice that someone who's very good at planning things into the future, generally they do have this kind of a layout. The layout is very clear, it's quite distinct. Without moving or changing position at all, the person has all of the information available to them. Okay, what about size?
The year in the future was much smaller than tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow was smaller than tomorrow.
Okay.
The year of future was, as far as the time, was larger.
Okay.
The smaller is going further into the future.
Okay. So what I know, just in the way that Dave answered the question, was he put the furthest away and came back to the present, rather than the present. Like I would say, the pictures are really bright around me, and as I see them going out into the future, they're getting smaller and smaller. So there's concern about where you are living in your present moment about the future. And that's the reason why your unconscious mind spoke about the future first in the sequencing of things just then. But anyway, now what about size going into the past?
Size went to the past. The past went this way, around the edge of the periphery. The furthest out being a year in the past.
All right, what I know is that there's something that David senses in life, that things are getting a little easier. There's something about the past that kind of was, well, it was a bit rough maybe, and you've come down from that, because what I saw you do with your arm was like this. So I know that you're feeling a sense of ease and you are coming into yourself, and yes, and there's that you sense that there's actually the road has been a little bit, like you're coming into an easier place.
Definitely better.
Okay. Our experience, and the way that we sort our experience is affected quite incredibly by the emotional processing, and the physics that's involved in the emotional processing is the emotion actually that we end up with. In other words, somebody really living in the present moment, this person truly, their pictures are very bright and very large in the present around them, and they're consumed by the present. Somebody who is totally consumed by the present and unable to see into the future, then possibly the present is totally taking away their ability to see into the future. In other words, it's right in front of them, it's right large. Right. Who else? Ned?
Put my past on the left, present was right here and right here, or within a week was right here. The past went like this.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit smaller in the distant past, a little bigger, and this was slightly. And here it was.
Very interesting.
And the God's a V.
Yes.
Is what it seemed like. And then these two, with 2 months in the future, it was really clear. The one a year away was less clear. It was still clear. It wasn't dull by any means, and it wasn't quite as sharp as what was happening.
Okay, so
it was small.
So what I know about Ned is that he's relatively clear in life somewhat about what he's doing at the present and how that's going to relate to what he's doing in the future. And also too that there's something very much that you're enjoying about what you're doing that's carrying over in the way that you see yourself in the future. Somebody who has this path set up, I would say this person's really got a path worked out in life a little. The other thing is too, Ned's way of sorting information enables him to be able to have access to everything, because everything is out here spatially to be able to draw on. And not only that, but he does have the ability to deal with stuff in the past that might not be so comfortable, because his pictures going further and further into the past are getting less and less detailed, and sort of, so that he does have the ability to move away from stuff that he would enjoy, and he also has the ability to easily pick out something from his past experience that's important, some learning or something or other. Okay, what about where the level, where were things actually?
They're right here, pretty much level. If anything, slightly up, and mostly level.
All right. So what I know is that Ned has been getting more comfortable in life somewhat, or at least in comparison to the way he thinks about things. It's always put in the context of today, because a year ago it might have been different, but today Ned is sensing that he's coming into an easy place. He's come into an easy place, an easier place somewhat, and it's just, if it was like that, then we would know, oh wow, he's really come into an easy place compared to where he was, the slope. And also that he's challenging himself in life, that Ned is continuing to grow, and that he's sensing that there's some challenge there, because the future is up just a little bit like this. Okay?
Alice had a real interesting pattern.
Okay, look, why don't we
Let's see. Well, what I thought was so interesting about it was I had it, my past back here and my future going this way.
So you had to turn your head to see the past?
Well, and then to see all of them together, it was easier for me to do it when I turned.
All right, okay, let's just say something about that right now. This kind of a strategy would enable a person not to be muddled at all about what's happened in the past. If there was stuff that was just something like that, then Ali's strategy, the strategy she has, it's nothing that she's been able to deal with it by moving it to a manner that she's actually got to turn her head in her mind literally to find that stuff. And mostly she's living with whatever it is that she senses is with her that's more like the value of the present. Where did they go? Where did they go again? Into the past? Show me with your hands.
The past was back here. And
okay, but show me sweeping with your hand. Sweep with your hand through the air.
Went back here and then more towards the center. And back
Okay.
was more off to the side, the first two, and then the third one was back in the center, so kind of a...
All right. Okay. So I sense that it was like this. Yes.
It was all pretty much level, and it went...
Okay. It was level.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So now, if it were down, okay, if somebody had it down like that, I would know that the person truly has really been walking uphill to get where they've got. Actually, there really has been some effort to get where you are. You've involved quite a bit of yourself to get where you are. And if it's level, more or less, then things have been more or less an even keel all the way through, in the way that you've been supported, yeah. What about size difference?
The furthest back was a lot smaller.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in the future, it was the same kind of thing. It was the first two were here, and then the furthest was more in the front, in the center.
Okay, the furthest was more in the center.
Yeah.
So how did it go? Did it go sweep out and around?
Yeah.
So
The whole thing was kind of like a yin-yang.
All right. Okay. So now one thing here. Now let's just think about how this could be. The first picture in the present, right, is bigger. Okay.
And over here.
All right. And then there's another picture that's over here in about a month. And kind of in what you were imagining was that they were sort of going around, were they going up so as you could see it, or?
Up a bit, yeah.
Okay, well then I would have to go up actually for you to be able to see it, because otherwise you would be so plagued about what's happening in the present you wouldn't be able to see it in the future, because the present picture is here and the future picture is kind of also, there because of them coming around. The only way that you would be able to see into the future would be as if they were coming up like that. And if that's the case, then what I know about Ali is her 80-year-old self or her 60-year-old self is realising like a lot that she's gained. I don't know. Her 80-year-old self probably can play 7 or 8 instruments really well. Her 80-year-old self probably has really like many things actually than where she is at the moment because of the upward direction. All right, one more person.
I've got some questions about my picture of me. What I did was I was taken to death so that picture I could see it today, but the past and the future weren't visual pictures, they were feelings of the past and the future. Instead of a picture of the placement, it was like the feelings had placements.
Okay, that's excellent because somehow or other there's been a strategy that's involved ability to dissociate in the visual system. Through the visual system you've been able to dissociate to cope with stuff. That's a strategy, and that as a result it's left you a little bit without a sense of being able to see the future somewhat. So I would say that this may, like, if you think about how it is that you plan things, like as a midwife, to what degree do you sense that in the planning of things you truly are arriving somewhere and everything is taken care of, or sometimes you're arriving somewhere and things are there's a more length, or there's more time that goes into that? Like, for instance, when you would go out to see someone who's going to give birth, to what degree when you look at things has it been ideal in your ability to plan exactly kind of how much of your effort and your life is involved in that moment?
And looking at a birth, how it's...
Yes, when you look at all the births somewhat, right, just generalising, we are just generalising, are you happy with the amount of time that you're spending during this process, during the labour and during the delivery, during the labour actually?
Not this year so much.
All right.
This year's been different.
Okay. Well, I'll just share one thing. Being able to see into the future really does help in sequencing and planning things. Being without a sense a little bit would enable you, may mean you spend more time with the women that you're with, because mostly it's kind of on a feeling, energetic level. Possibly then all of a sudden you look and you see, oh well, possibly, yeah. So being able to use the visual system enables us to see from afar up close something, and sometimes also to see the big picture, actually.
One of the things that seemed a little incongruent was my eyes were really flickering the whole time I was feeling.
Okay, so now it's possible that you were seeing.
I was seeing.
Oh, you were for sure, but not consciously.
Not me taking a bath.
You know, another interesting aspect was that in the past it was pain, the feeling, and in the future it was...
In the past it was rough.
Yeah, it was rough.
In the future, in the near future, was smooth. And the feeling further way in the future was not a very strong feeling.
Right.
Okay, so, you know, literally the submodalities of roughness, a little rough grain, is true possibly. You've really been able to, just like, you know, the explorers, just track out through the wilderness to get where you've got. Somebody who really had tracked out through the wilderness and had to cut, you know, their way with machetes through stuff to get here, you know, really would sense pictures in the past a little bit like with a rougher grain possibly. Someone who could see it with a finer grain to the future, you would know the person's moving into like a greater sense of smoothness and clarity than what they're sensing present or the past in relation to the past. But anyway, being able to use the visual system to see into the future, and I would simply, when you're relaxed, or even now, just to see yourself taking a bath all the way out into the future, and to see yourself taking a bath all the way back into the past, and even see yourself as a little girl actually, you know, walking around, and maybe there's some other people there or something, and actually you can see yourself taking a bath. To be able to do this, then we're truly making use of the visual system, you know, going back into the past and into the future. And I know this does have something to do with my ability to be able to plan things in the future. Maybe I don't know, this is a suggestion, because I know that every time I've been here and you've been delivering, you really you spend quite a bit of time with the mother that's delivering, and I sense that there's some things that you gain from that as well a little bit. It gets you out of the home a tiny bit, and legitimately you truly are that kind of person that you develop relationship like a sister with the people, with the women that you're with, and so that gives you time to do that. However, sometimes I sense that you may be tired, a little, and also that possibly you spend a lot of time in the, there.
This year.
Yeah, this year.
It used to be just in the very beginning, like 11, 12 years ago. It seemed like my lack of knowledge about things perhaps created a lack of confidence in the birthing woman, which had their labors lasting longer. And then as I gained confidence, for many, many years, everyone, just their births, they were never long.
Yes.
And then this year, there's been some real long ones.
Okay, so one thing I think is simply just whatever it is that's been happening to you a little bit, the visual system has been very important in what's been going on, and that you have used the visual system. Yes, because you've dissociated in the visual system to cope. That's the major way we cope with stuff that's like rough, a little. Major way people cope is actually in the visual system. Most stuck states, you'll notice, when you were dealing with a woman who kind of really is in a bit of a stuck state, you'll hear just by listening to the person speak that they are not using very many visual predicates, probably hardly any at all actually, and mostly kinesthetic auditory predicates. Anyway, so the answer is in the visual system. If somebody's looping over the visual system, the answer is in the system that the person is the sense the person is looping over.
So visually, when we did that thing last month, there was not too many visual predicates for me. Although when I am talking,
right. Yes, I know that you're accessing. Yes.
So I'm confused about.
Okay. So
and when I was with this thing that we did, where I didn't see it, but also my eyes were really flickering. It just seems incongruent.
Okay, look, flickering of the eyes is rapid eye movement, and letting me know that you're a highly visually evolved person, that you truly can feel the shape of things totally with your hands, and that you are accessing information visually. I might be going and doing, I'm exiting in kinesthetic, but when you see me doing this, I'm accessing, in vision. If I'm exiting visually, then you'll hear words that are involving the visual system. Do you see what I mean? Or to get a clear perspective or get a frame of reference around this, that would be exiting also in vision. So if I talked about seeing and you see me doing this, okay, what you know is that I'm accessing information in vision, I'm exiting in auditory and visual. So bringing visual predicates into the speech enhances the visual system, and being able to in a quiet space see yourself in the bathtub, go back into the past and see yourself in the bathtub going into the future. Doing this will wire this process into the brain.
And then when I'm in design, I kind of close it down or concentrating. This crease here, is that?
Yes, the crease here is closing out on auditory external. It's a strategy that's really helped probably. Maybe there was stuff on the outside that was stuff that you truly just didn't want to hear. There was stuff probably that was like that. And you were able to close out auditory external, and to have what it is that's there for you. So lineage this way is closing down auditory external. Closing down like this would be closing down visually, visual, external. Okay.
So now that we have this information, we just rearrange it and then make one strategy, look at it, feel it, notice. I mean, what's the purposefulness of this now that we have it? Especially since mine is so different this time.
Yes. The first thing is that I use this sometimes to calibrate what's happening for the person. I'll ask them these questions just to find out how their experience is, how they're experiencing life, to get information about the person, and then And then, the minute that they fit in this way of, this orderly manner of things, all things that come as a result of that, the person has available to them. And the main thing is if you do this, the brain does have the ability to swap back to the other system, any time that you want. The main thing is if you wire in the new pattern, then the brain also has that there as well. And generally, I'll say one thing, the brain usually moves toward what is most conducive for sorting information. It does it just like that. You only have to talk about it, and the brain really is wanting to actually, fit the new system in.
Is this a way to do a switch back?
After you've done something like this with the individual, they'll generally feel clearer about life, and there'll be a greater sense of ease. You'll notice the person's a tiny little bit more living, in the moment somewhat.
I had an interesting experience asking people to look at their loved one and then look at Daniel Quayle. Boy, a lot of people put Quayle right down on the ground about the size of an inch and a half.
Yes, okay, so actually let's say something small about this because it'll give insight to everybody. I asked Ned, just so that we can really get an indication on how pictures affect us, right? I said to Ned, well, picture Ginger out there in front of you. And Ned pictures Ginger out in front of him. And I said, where is Ginger? And he said, oh, she's right here. She was very close. And I said, is there much room in your head for what it is that you're thinking of yourself? And where Ginger was, Ginger's very important to Ned. Ginger was very close, mostly occupying Ned quite a bit. And so then I said, well, where's the picture of the Ayatollah Khomeini? And so then Ned pictures the Ayatollah Khomeini, and he's like,
right here.
He's really
over here on the left thing is about the same size as Ginger was. Ginger was more of the center.
Is that true?
Yeah, and then David did this really excellent thing. He goes, now Ned has the ability to not really judge. Judge negatively because the Ayatollah had been he just died, I think.
Yeah.
And he, all these horrendous things that he had done and he brought up. And I actually just thought of Ayatollah. He's just another guy. He's right over here. Ginger was just slightly to the right.
Okay, now actually, so positioning something a little bit more to the left and feeling is it may involve some degree of a lesser than kind of a sense. Somebody that you place over here is really someone that really brings you into your positive sense relatively in relation.
So two different dictators in different ways.
But anyway, something. I think maybe the day that I asked you this too, there may have been a little bit of nonchalantness with Ginger, because I tell you, if you were just just totally in raptures, with Ginger, then she really would be quite big, and you'd really be trying to look, you really wouldn't be able to see much else.
Like where she is now.
Okay, so I don't know, maybe Penny and I did this once, I don't know, where I asked Penny, I said, Penny, is there anybody that intimidates you? I don't think, Penny, there was anybody, I don't know. But anyway, if there was, someone came to me and they said, oh, every time I go into this meeting, I just can't get words out edgewise. I just feeling just useless. And I go in there with really good ideas, and I'm sensing I have excellent ideas, but it's just useless. And I said, is there anybody in the meeting that intimidates you? And this person said, oh, yes. And I said, is there, I said, where is this person? Point to where this person is. And this person, was up here. And of course that's true. Look, if somebody is that huge, you are not going to have much room around the perimeter of this person. That's about as much brain, as you've got really to deal with something that's going on yourself. Do you understand that? Mm-hmm. In other words, if a visual image is so large it's taken up a lot of space, then there is only a little bit of cortex left for you to think about what's going on, something else that's going on actually. And so this person was quite dear. This person that intimidated was quite endearing to this other person, and so what they did was they shrunk the person down small, and brought them over and put them in their hand, close to themselves, so that like they had all of this room in their neurology, in their head, to kind of be thinking themselves, and yet this person was meaning something to them, so they brought them in close, so there was intimacy there, and closeness. If the person really was just an asshole, literally they could just put the person like way out over there, real small, One day, this girl came to me. This was when I was in north of Seattle, and she was really